Hi, everybody at Lismore City Council. Thanks very much for joining us. Those who could, we had some kind of an issue with the invite. So I'm sorry if you've had to watch the recording of it, but you haven't missed a thing. So if you're watching the recording, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is where you are. I'm aware that there has been some shifts happening again at Lismore City Council. And so today's safety topic is probably very relevant. We're talking about, today we're talking about quiet quitting and what that means. Let me just come out of the way here a little bit. You may have seen this phrase coming up on media or on social media, or hear people talking about it. And essentially what quiet quitting is it's a new term for an old sort of leadership problem, if you like. It's around disengagement. Unions used to often call it a work to rule, and the idea was you would do the bare minimum that's required, no more, no less. And that's what it's kind of started to mean to people today as well. You know, I'm tired of trying to prove myself. I'm tired of doing more than is expected of me and not getting the recognition that I feel I deserve, etc. And it's not about the money, but sometimes it becomes about the money. But it's about sort of that sense of belonging and knowing that we matter. And there are other ways, there are other currencies that we can appreciate for the work we do. I'll come into all of this as well. I just wanted to sort of set the scene, if you like. So that's what quiet quitting is. I'm just going to do the bare minimum. I'm going to take my lunch hour. I'm going to not look at emails after 6 o'clock. I'm going to, I'm going to finish, on the button. And if your reason for doing that is self-care, then high fives and big hugs from me, because that is, that's self-care personified, having a fulfilling life. But if you're doing it out of some sort of reaction or some sort of quiet resistance, if you like, to your role, doing it quietly isn't going to serve you or anybody else. So let's have a chat about what that looks like. But you're not alone if this is what you're feeling. Gallup research, even this year, has found that as many as 75% of workers are quiet quitting on some level. And it is that sort of silent resistance, if you like. So people are resigning, people are leaving, people are sort of slowing down and doing just the bare minimum, etc., as some kind of quiet protest. So quiet quitting, if you're a leader of people here and you're watching this, it's actually a trust problem. It's not an employee problem. If an individual can't sort of identify some degree of fulfillment and sort of self-actualization from their current job, if their sense of purpose and values isn't being met, they're viewing their job solely as a sort of a means of living, supporting other activities. It's a means of just earning a wage. And there's something missing from that picture. And what's missing, I think, is trust, but also sort of a sense of belonging, if you like. So employees are way more likely to be engaged and less likely to quit if they have a leader or a manager who sort of rates highly on balancing relationships and sort of results. So it's not one or the other. There's a nice balance between the two. So for managers in that sort of top 10% of highly rated leaders, if you like, the ones up at the top, 3 out of 5 of your employees are willing to go the extra mile. But if you're in that sort of bottom 10%, maybe 1 in 5 would be willing to go the extra mile for you, and they probably have an ulterior motive. So what's happening there, as I said, if the quiet quitting sort of thing is starting to occur in your teams or in yourself, we need to have a think about 2 areas. So as I said, pardon me, this journey we're talking about, it's a journey towards trust. Now, that diagram I'm showing on the screen, don't read too much into it. It's part of a much larger conversation. But what I did want to point out in it, 2 areas. Somebody is not feeling a sense of belonging. Somebody is not feeling like they're trusted. And the journey to that space is always going to go through the expectations that people need to know. They need to have clear expectations, clarity around their role. Because when they've got that, they can be autonomous in how they actually deliver their best work and are trusted to deliver their best work. So if somebody is not feeling the love, this is what will be going on. They're not clear on what's expected of them, most likely, and they don't have some sense of autonomy in how to deliver on their role to experience the level of trust that they've got. And so autonomy, being autonomous or having some sense of control in the role and knowing you're getting it right is the best sort of antidote to burnout, if you like. So that's why, it appears in any kind of conversation around these sorts of areas. So autonomy is really, really important. Impact, knowing that what we do matters, is going to be hugely important to anybody in a role. So that sense of belonging comes from that sense of impact. And when you've got that autonomy and you've got that sense of impact, trust is the next sort of stage of the conversation. And of course, then feeling safe enters into that. So employees at every level, leaders and team sort of members, if you like, we're attracted to creating impact. We need to know that what we're doing makes a difference. It doesn't have to be a major impact. Just knowing that what we're doing is bigger than ourselves is going to be enough. And so taking a few extra minutes as a leader to explain why somebody's work is important to a customer or their colleagues can be enough to satisfy this need that we have to know that we belong and that we matter. And it's the same, you can sort of have that conversation with your peers as well, to be able to sort of satisfy that need that we have to know that we belong. So the problem then that we would have, or anybody would have, in participating in this sort of quiet quitting sense of doing the bare minimum, is that it will turn into a lack of engagement. And the impact of that can be felt by customers or teams in the form of a bad customer experience or a breakdown of team spirit and team cooperation, if you like. So the idea of doing the bare minimum, even though it might be a sort of a protest, or you might just be sick of trying to prove yourself, if we say we're acting our wage, then what's happening is there's going to be a disengagement and a disconnection somewhere. And what generally tends to occur when that starts to appear. Again, look, here's a big model. Don't drill down into all of it, but if you've seen this before, if you've been following my Lunch and Learn series, because we talked about burnout as a challenging issue in today's world, if you like, in today's working world, certainly. And one area of burnout, and again, disconnection or disengagement, is this idea of apathy, this kind of idea that cynicism, if you like, the individual doesn't feel like we have a sense of belonging. So we're not feeling seen, we're not feeling heard or appreciated. And so we start to become cynical about the leader. We can become cynical about the organization. We can become cynical about the work that we do. We can start speaking unfavorably or bad-mouthing or being, denigrating the organization, the leader, our teams, clients and customers. And when that starts to happen, what you'll notice is gossiping. You'll notice gossiping around the office. And what's happening when people are gossiping is they're just not feeling that sense of belonging. And they're not feeling heard or seen, and certainly not feeling valued. And so that sort of bad mouthing sort of talk starts to occur. And when that happens, if we see it happening, we need to kind of nip it in the bud, because what's going on is the individual is trying to, well, it's a shitty place to be on your own. It's uncomfortable. And this is not a pleasant experience, a work experience for someone. So they'll try to recruit others into that space, but also to validate that what they're feeling is actually right. So speaking badly about whatever it is that's sort of causing the disquiet, if they can get other people involved in it, then they'll feel a bit better about it. then that becomes contagious in a team. So it's not a good place to be. So we have to kind of call that out if we see it. And it's the first step we have in sort of making sure people are sort of connected and belonging again, and not heading down the quiet quitting road. Pardon me. So let me just share this on the screen. Let me get completely out of your way for just a second. If we were to draw this model, and I'm inviting you now to have a look at it yourself, which one of these quadrants do you think you feel you're in? So you'll see the vertical line is about feeling undervalued or about feeling valued. So that'd be sort of disconnected or sort of belonging, if you like. The horizontal line talks about undercompensation or feeling like you're compensated. And look, as I said earlier, it's not about the money, but sometimes it's all about the money. What it's really about, though, is currency, which isn't always cash. I mean, there are other things that we might recognize that we get value from, and it could be opportunity. It could be the sense of achievement. It could be the happiness that we get from work. When we're working in a local government area, we've already sort of started in that space by, knowing that what we do matters to an entire society and to an entire community. And for God's sake, Lismore City Council, what you're doing for the people who have suffered through so much in the last few years, that's a great currency in knowing that what we do makes a difference. So when I talk about being compensated or undercompensated, don't just think about the money, because, we know you're all sort of paid on, there's a scale that everybody in the organization is on, and that's what you're compensated on. And where you are on that scale determines the money you get. So it's not about the money in that case, it's about something else. But if we're feeling undervalued and we're feeling undercompensated and we're just not getting enough, then we're going to be resistant to the work we need to do. But if we're feeling valued and we're undercompensated, we're probably compliant and we've probably been carrying more than our fair share, which is noble and well done. And every organization needs it, at least on a temporary basis. But if it's all you're experiencing, you'll start to slip below that line at some point in time. That's quiet quitting. If you're feeling your compensation is fair because everybody's on that sort of same rate or whatever, but you're not feeling valued by your leader or by the organization or by your teams, you're going to stagnate. And the sense of purpose, sense of values are going to disappear. So really where we want to be, everybody wants to be up in this top right paddock up here, feeling valued and feeling like, fair pay or fair opportunity. That sense that we belong to something and that sense that we matter to something is much more valuable to us. So that's the area that kind of we all want to be. So it's a question of how do we get that? We're coming there. And look, it's a much bigger conversation than today would allow for anyway. But just thinking about where you are on that space right now is going to give you a fair answer. If you're in any of these three areas, quiet quitting might be sort of bubbling away in the background. So it's about trust. It's about belonging. And it can kind of be about something a little more than that as well. So, and I'm going to talk to you about this concept of mattering. This might sound like I just made this up. I didn't. Mattering is a real thing, and it comes from mattering as a concept. It's a psychological concept, and it comes from the work that was done in the 50s around self-esteem and the first acknowledgement of what that might be, and flowed from there. And then this phrase or this term mattering, which you can imagine talks about how much we matter to people or to ourselves. Mattering then started to come into the sort of lexicon around the 1980s or whatever. And it's kind of been sitting behind belonging for a long, long time. Belonging is such an important concept for everybody. I'm mindful that my internet might get unstable again, but we plow on regardless. So when I talk about mattering, I'm talking about this feeling that, we matter. It's a contributor to positive mental health, as it says there. Mattering is the sort of extent to which we make a difference in the world around us. And it fluctuates between fairness and well-being. It's always kind of somewhere in and around there for us. It's a general belief that we are important to other people, but we're also important to ourselves. The challenge for it, or in psychological terms, we always have to have a sort of the other side of the coin, and that is the unfortunate phrase antimattering, which is the psychological term that came up, because antimatter is something that happens in space, I think. Not really sure, but antimattering just means that you feel like you don't matter, or you feel like you don't belong somewhere. And that is a slippery slope towards loneliness and isolation and disconnection, vulnerable to mental ill health, then anxiety, depression, loneliness, feeling insignificant. And if we're doing a role and then we're doing more than is expected of us, and we're still not getting that sense of value that we feel we deserve, the key coping mechanism for that is to sort of build up a wall around us so that we can't get hurt. And this then causes pain in other areas of life. So continuing to prove ourselves worthy of our role can lead to this anti-mattering idea. And it can be exhausting, and we may well sort of give up on it. So mattering is more than belonging. It talks about the extent to which we make a difference in the world, as I said, and I'll probably repeat that statement a couple of times. But very often that's about us. We need to know that we make a difference, and we need to be told that we make a difference. Why we matter to other people is actually really, really important to us. So the extent to which we make a difference in the world is going to be also related to how people relate to us. And others will attend to us around they become aware of us. So they sort of make connection with us. So then when we've got that, it sort of breaks down that whole isolation and loneliness, which we found out during COVID and lockdowns and hybrid working, etc., does actually make a big difference. But people will also invest themselves in us if we matter, and if what we're doing is bigger than ourselves, they will invest themselves in us, and that sort of sense of importance shows us why we matter. But I think also this is a really important one. People will kind of look to us as a resource. They'll start to rely on us as being part of a team. And that then is when we know that we're doing something that's bigger than ourselves. So if you're a leader of people, this is really important. Your people need to know that you rely on them. They need to know that they're important to the team. And they need to know, people are aware of them. This awareness of us can be a little bit abstract, if you like. And whenever I see this or I talk about this, I'm reminded of a story of a guy who worked in an organization in Germany, and he died at his desk, and it was 3 days before anybody noticed. And I think it was probably because of the smell. I'm not really sure. I'd imagine that's what it would have been. But he was 3 days dead at his desk before anybody sort of took notice that something was wrong. So there's a lack of awareness and a lack of mattering there, isn't there, when you think about it? And it's desperately sad that can be the situation for people. But it can be. So if you're a leader, sorry, I'm just reading the chats. Yeah, it is horrible. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't freak you up for bringing it up, Ange. But yeah, it's it occurs, and it occurs when people pass away and they're not missed for months and that sort of thing. It does occur. But if you're a leader of people, your people need to know that they matter. They need to know that they belong to something, and they need to know that what they're delivering is bigger than themselves. If they're not getting that, and if they're not feeling that sense of appreciation or shared values, quiet quitting is what happens. So I would say if you're an individual who is experiencing that, I completely get why somebody would want to start quiet quitting. If it's for self-care, good for you. But if it's because you're not feeling appreciated or compensated with whatever your currency is, I would suggest to you that quiet quitting isn't going to achieve very much at all. Don't do it quietly. It would be the first question. Speak up, have a conversation with whoever you need to have a conversation with. And that probably involves having a boundary. So if you feel like you're being taken advantage of, somebody's going to be transgressing over your boundaries. Seek what you need from your role, from your employer, from your team, from your colleagues, whatever it is. Find out what the clear purpose of what you do is. You need to know that what you do matters. You need to know what's expected of you. We're back to the expectations kind of space again. So ask for feedback. Frequent conversations around how we're doing reduces anxiety, reduces perfectionism, it increases engagement, lets people know that they matter, as long as it's valuable feedback, that is, and constructive and specific. So that's if you're somebody who's experiencing this sort of sense of disquiet and lack of appreciation. So if you're quiet quitting, don't do it quietly. Have the conversation and find out what's going on and what can be done for you. If you're a leader of people watching this, I would suggest that what is going on for somebody, if you're not having the conversation, look for what might be their yearning. Look for what it is you think they might need, because it might not be explicit and they might not even know themselves. But if someone in your team is unhappy, don't assume that they know they're valued. We all need to hear that we're valued from time to time. It's part of our survival instinct. We just need to know. Secondly, I would suggest have a plan for their development. So know that they have a sense of purpose and know that they're going somewhere, that they're not stagnating. Do you remember we spoke about stagnating in the previous slide? If people are down here, they may be compensated and you might think, yeah, they're getting good money for what they do. But if they're feeling undervalued and they don't have a sort of plan of progression, they're not going to sort of lock into what they can deliver and how much they matter. So again, don't do it quietly, folks. Leaders don't do it quietly. Have the conversations that we need to have. And the reason why this is the conversation today, there is a safety angle to all of this. And the safety angle really is, because this is the monthly safety focus, if someone or your team is experiencing that disharmony, they're going to be distracted. And we know what happens when people are distracted. Accidents can occur. When somebody says, not my job, and walk past, something that makes the workplace unsafe, that's not good for anybody. So we need to sort of be on top of what's going on here. So if I had any takeaways for anybody who's watching this, be you a leader or be you a team member, know your boundaries, know what is expected of you, and know what you expect of your role and the organization. And if you're not getting it, then a boundary is being crossed for you. So have the conversation. If you're quiet quitting and you're not sort of pulling the same as everybody else, your colleagues may get the wrong idea and they may become a bit sort of pissed off with you, or they might become a bit disgruntled, or they may feel like you're not sort of part of the team anymore. And then that can cause all sorts of disquiet, etc., and team sort of rupture and team spirit drops, etc. So if that's where you're at, again, conversations need to actually happen. And so once again, as I say, sorry, there's something in the chat. Oh, okay, good. Don't keep it quiet. Quiet quitting doesn't actually serve anybody. And in fact, as I said before, the grass is exactly the same color on the other side, and more people than not regret the move after they've made the move because they didn't have the conversation where they were. Sound is all smooth now. Okay, hopefully we'll be able to fix this up in the recording a little bit later. But as usual, folks, If anybody has any questions or anything they want to ask me about this whole concept, be you a leader or be you an individual, this is where you'll find me. Sorry, that's a shameless plug for my new book. I'll be telling you more about that a bit later on. It's not out until February. But yeah, the pursuit of radical self-care is a very, very important part, I think, of where we are today. So what I'll do now is I'll stop sharing, but I'll give you just a few seconds to take a screen grab of that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for coming along, and we'll see you all again soon. And as I said, keep in touch and reach out if there's anything I can do for you. Thank you.